Okay, we are live. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Liku Amadi, founder and attorney of Anasa Law Firm, where I work with online coaches, consultants, and strategists to help them establish a solid legal foundation for business. One of the main ways that I do that is via contracts, because every business lives on contracts, and every business owner needs a thorough custom client contract to do business. So today we'll be talking about resolving client disputes with contracts, right? And before I jump into that, I am a licensed attorney. However, anything I say on this slide is not legal advice. It is legal information for educational purposes only. If you need legal advice, then you need to enter into an engagement with me or contact another attorney to get advice specific to you. With that being said, so at the very top of this live, and every live, we're going to start the same. What is a contract, right? A contract is not a document. A contract is not a document. It is a lot more than that. The contract that you use with your clients are the foundation of your client relationships. It is the tool that you use to facilitate that relationship, right? And as the business owner, the person who is supplying the contract for that relationship, it is your responsibility to provide something that produces win-win scenarios for you and your clients, right? And so I'm constantly redefining contracts in that manner because I want us to understand what a contract really is and how we're supposed to view it and how we're supposed to look at it, which is what we're going to talk about further when we're talking about resolving client disputes using our client contracts, right? So this is not necessarily a how-to as in step 1, step 2, if this, step 3, 3A, right? This is, again, an opportunity to understand how to look at your contracts and how to make it easier for you to resolve disputes if you're looking and using your contracts in a certain manner. Again, going back to the idea that contracts are not just a document, right? They're the foundation of the client relationship, which you as a business owner have the responsibility to lay in a specific manner, right? So we'll boil this down to 3 points, right? And the very first one being, don't be selfish with your contracts. What does that mean, right? So generally, when I work with business owners, they're looking at their contracts as, I need to make sure it protects me. I need to make sure it does this for me, me. What if this happens to me, right? And that's totally valid because you want a contract in place to protect you. But let's keep in mind that a contract is a tool to facilitate a relationship, right? And a relationship is a two-way street. So think about any relationship you've been in, whether romantic, familial, um, professional, personal, right? Like if there's a relationship and someone is only worried about their needs, how do those relationships end? Not so well, right? There's a lot of this butting heads, especially like if you have to work together. There becomes some tension, some unspoken words, right? You are not on the same page because everybody is worried about themselves. So same thing with contracts. When you're doing business and you're working with clients, there's supposed to be a relationship which you provide. Or which you provide the contract to help facilitate that relationship in the best way possible, right? And if you're only looking out for your own interests, if you're only looking out as to what's good for you, then that relationship is going to derail somehow, some way, or it's not going to be the most ideal. And so when I say don't be selfish with your contract, think about your client, right? Think about the person on the other side and think about when you're a client as well, right? You want to be involved in the relationship. You want to know what's going on in the relationship. You want to know what is required of you from the relationship. You don't want any surprise, right? You don't want any surprise as to what the relationship entails. you want to know from the jump, right? So not being selfish with your contract means drafting it in a way that benefits you as a business owner. Of course, it protects you, it makes your job easier. It also protects the client, it protects their investment. And that means you communicating to them exactly what is going on in this business relationship. Because once the two of you are on the same page, right, it's not just you thinking about you or the client thinking about the client, but once the two of you are on the same page and you're able to work together, it becomes easier, which means there's less opportunity for disputes, for miscommunication, or any types of issues. And when those things do come up, your contract is so thorough that you have avenues as to how you can resolve those things. I was working with a client yesterday who said, sometimes things just come up with clients and the contract doesn't address it. And my response to that was, yes, it does, right? Because if you have a contract that is thorough and that is drafted in the best interest of facilitating this relationship, then you will find flexibility to be able to resolve various disputes, right? Because disputes do come up. They're not always considered disputes. They just might be circumstances that change, right? Things that need to be adjusted. So it's not always a problem. But yes, don't be selfish. That is point number one. Make it easy for you and your client to be on the same page so that the work is a lot easier for the two of you to facilitate seamlessly. Number two is tell your clients how you do business, right? And this ties into number one. So when I say tell your clients how you do business, think about the policies that you have in place, right? Think about the fees, so for communications policy, payment policy, if there's installments, how does that work? Late fees, right? Payment is super important, super, super important. People are investing tens of thousands of dollars to work with you. So they want to know what's going to happen with their money, right? If there's any late fees, if there's any penalties, if there are any fees associated to additional services that they might need, or if they may need to change their services depending on the circumstances of the client relationship, right? You don't want there, again, to be any surprise as to how you do business. Think about, and I'm sure we've all been in this scenario where we've engaged in some type of transaction, and then all of a sudden there's like this additional fee that we didn't know about. I'm planning my wedding right now, and there's a lot of surprise, like, oh, this 250 right here, oh, and it's like, fine, if that's what's required to do business, okay, but it will make things a lot easier. It will make my husband and I a lot happier if we knew about these things on the front end, right? Because then otherwise it's kind of just like, where did this come from? Like, is it anything else that's coming down the line? Is this person trying to play me? All of these thoughts come and they brew distrust, and that messes up the foundation of the client relationship, right? So you don't want any surprise as to how you do business. So again, payment policies, anything surrounding payment, anything surrounding installments, anything surrounding penalties, refunds, like you want all of that to be spelled out. Communication policies, right? Any limits to your services. So when people describe their services, also describing what they don't do is super helpful because you are the expert, right? So what you do is very clear to you, but it's not always as clear to the client. So making sure they know exactly what you're going to be providing them. Whatever your boundaries are in business, right? How many times people can have a late payment, or how many times people can postpone their work with you, or if you have strong rules around deadlines, think about what those boundaries are, and those all need to be communicated in the client contract, again, to facilitate that seamless relationship between you and your client. No surprises. No surprises. The contract is supposed to reflect the work that you are going to do together. And again, every situation is different. So things come up that you didn't anticipate, and that's totally fine, but no surprises to the extent that you can prevent that on your end. right? So that when there are surprises, you at least have a solid foundation in place to be able to address those surprises. And then point number three is clearly describing your services. And I was talking about this already a little bit just a moment ago. Um, whew, man, clearly describing your services is super important. Again, what you know to be true and how you describe things makes sense to you, but your client is not the same, right? They're probably in a different industry. They don't have your expertise. You're probably the first or second person they worked with on this, right? They need to be able to read the contract and understand what you're communicating to them. You need to be able to provide a contract where it's not difficult to understand what you have in mind, right? So clearly communicating your services means telling them exactly what you are going to do for them, how you're going to do it for them, when you're going to do it for them, right? Any circumstances and how that may apply, any changes depending on your industry, right? It's all different, but it all needs to be crystal clear. When I'm working with my clients who are consultants, I often advise them um, to have preliminary meetings with their clients, right? Or clients to be before they start working together so that they can introduce them to their policies, how they do business, and then really describe the services that they're going to be providing to them so that everyone's on the same page with regard to what's coming out of this relationship, right? What the goals and objectives are, any concerns like issues around timeline or deadlines, right? You want to be on the same page. And I advise them to have that conversation because then after that, you're giving them a contract that reflects what you've already talked about. Again, no surprises, right? They clearly understand what your services entail. And more importantly, they clearly understand what they're investing in, right? They know where their money is going and why they are paying you, and what they're going to get out of it. This also helps manage expectations, right? So if your client is expecting something that you are not providing, just by the description of your services, then this helps make it clear again exactly what you're going to do and not do for them. I often see vague phrases or vague language, right? Like 2 weeks of support, right? 2 weeks of support for stepping into the next level CEO or something like that. Like, what does that mean? What does that mean? That means something to you, right? And it sounds good and it's powerful to you, but what is the client getting from that, right? If you're talking about 2 weeks of support, what does that look like? Does that mean email support? Is that Voxer support? If it is Voxer support, are there limits on the number of messages people can send you? Is it within a certain time frame, right? Are these phone calls or the phone call scheduled? Can someone just pick the phone up and talk to you? Are these Zoom calls, right? And if someone has, let's say, 4 calls with you throughout this 2 week period, how long are the calls, right? Because I would expect at a certain investment level, if the calls were only, let's say, 15 minutes when I'm thinking they should be an hour, then we're not on the same page. So be as clear as possible as to what these people are paying you for, right? That's the bottom line, is that you don't want any ambiguity. You want to be on the same page. I was working on a contract review recently, and the word fluent was used, right? This service provider was providing a package, and part of that was to help team members become fluent in something, right? And the word fluent I flagged as vague because I was thinking when I was in Spanish class, I have 5 years of Spanish from middle school to early high school, and I don't know a lick of Spanish, right? Hola, ¿cómo estás? That I can't get much further than that. And so all that time you would expect that, I was fluent, but I'm not. I grew up speaking another language and, I'm not fluent in it today, right? So to me, fluent means like well versed, right? I can take some, I can understand it, I can speak it. And so when I see someone say that someone's going to be fluent in XYZ, or they're going to teach them to the extent that they'll become fluent, right? I'm asking questions like, what does fluent mean to you? If you're only working with them for X amount of months, is that enough time for them to become fluent? What do you think their understanding of fluence is? Because if they don't feel fluent at the end of their work with you, then what happens, right? They're going to come to you. They're going to be like, this investment didn't work out. So being careful using words that are um, subject to various interpretation, right? Everything is subjective. Like you don't want to use terms that, again, make it so you and your client aren't on the same page. Because if I pay for something and they tell me that I'm going to end up being fluent in something, and I walk out of that program and I'm not fluent, I'm gonna be like, I know it wasn't me, right? I'm gonna look at the service provider and say, like, what went wrong here? Do we need more time working together, et cetera, right? So making sure you're clear in exactly what you're offering, and then just being careful with the language that you use, vague language like support, like fluent, like lifetime, right? Just words that could be subject to various interpretation, because you want the client to understand your interpretation of it, right? So again, being clear. So those 3 points. Number one, don't be selfish with the contract. Draft it not just to protect you, but in a way that helps you facilitate an ideal relationship between you and your client, because a relationship is a two-way street, right? Number two, tell your clients how you do business. Explain your policies around payment, communication, refunds, edits, changes to the services, pausing services, all of that, right? Number three is clearly describe your services. Really be particular about communicating what you're doing for the client, what you're not doing, and then using language that supports all of that and makes it very clear. So, of course, like I said, I'm an attorney. I focus on contracts. And if you are listening to this live and you're thinking like, my contract probably needs an upgrade, then you're probably right? If you haven't upgraded your contract in the last 6 months, if you've been using a template, if you've been borrowing a contract, if somebody loaned you a contract, if you do not have a client contract that has been custom around your business and the services that you provide, then your contract is lacking, right? So if you're ready to upgrade your contract, please reach out to me. Do not try to DIY, do it yourself, or try to cut corners, because when we're looking at our businesses, if there's one thing that we need to do business, if there is one thing after having the service offering and all of that, it's a contract, right? It is a contract. This is a most important piece for you to be able to facilitate business between you and your client. It's literally the foundation of your relationship. It dictates how you work together. So please don't DIY. Please don't cut corners. It's just going to provide a headache for you. It's going to take time, right? And you're not going to end up in a secure space where you feel protected, because it is likely not your expertise. Your expertise is something else. So hit me up, shoot me a DM, get on my calendar to see how we can work together and revamp your contract and get back you, and get you back, get you back into your position as a CEO, where you're spending your time on the money generating activities. If you have questions about working together, feel free to hit me up. Khalil said hello. Hey, Khalil. Thank you for joining. If you have questions, shoot me a DM. And again, get on my calendar so we can see how we work together. 2023 is literally right around the corner, and we don't want to be ending 2022 without solid contracts. All right? Okay. I will catch y'all on the next live, and have a good day.